For months I thought she was just a student, someone barely scraping by. I gave her advice, I treated her like family. Then her father showed up, wealthy, powerful, and the truth hit me. She was a billionaire's daughter. I was halfway through polishing my daughter's old charm bracelet in the security booth when the screaming cut through the quiet like a siren. 10:30 at night. Millbrook Community College usually settled into a rhythm. Students buried in books, vending machines humming, the occasional drunk stumbling back to the dorms. But that scream was sharp, terrified. I didn't think. I just ran. The sound carried me straight to the row of dormitories, where the yellow light from the common area spilled out across the pavement. 3 boys, rich-looking, cocky, had circled a girl in a coffee shop uniform. She couldn't have been more than 20. Her laptop was in one boy's hands, and another shoved her so hard she went down on the asphalt. Hot coffee splattered everywhere. "Stay in your lane, scholarship girl," one of them sneered. That was all I needed to hear. I broke into the circle, 20 years of military service in my stride. "Campus security," I barked, my voice carrying more steel than the radio on my belt. "Step away from her." Now. They froze, eyes darting to my badge, then to my frame. For all their money and bravado, they weren't built for real confrontation. The one holding the laptop tried to smooth it over. "We were just talking, sir." Talking. I took one step closer, letting my shadow swallow them. Talking doesn't involve knocking someone to the ground. They scattered fast, like roaches when the light flicks on. The girl got to her feet slowly, brushing dirt from her skirt. Her uniform was spotless despite the fall, pressed so sharply it didn't fit the image of a tired barista. And the laptop she clutched to her chest? A top-of-the-line MacBook that cost more than I cleared in a month. "Thank you, officer," she said, her voice even, too composed for someone who had just been bullied. "I'm Maya." She tried to sound like an ordinary coffee shop worker, but something about her posture, her calm eyes, it didn't match the role. She carried herself like she belonged to another world entirely. I walked her back to her dorm, made sure the door shut behind her, then headed home to my own apartment 3 miles off campus. It wasn't much, just a kitchen table with a framed picture of my daughter Allison in her Boston University sweatshirt, and the ever-growing stack of unpaid bills from my late wife's cancer treatment. 2 years gone, and I still reached for the phone some nights, ready to call her. 45 years old, 11 years of walking this campus in a security uniform, and some days I felt like I was barely keeping my head above water. I opened the drawer by the bed and held that bracelet again. Each silver charm told Allison's story. Her first day of kindergarten, middle school graduation, the day she got her acceptance letter. I'd worked double shifts that whole summer just to cover the rest of her tuition. The apartment felt hollow without her laughter, without Jennifer's voice. The microwave dinged, and I ate pizza alone, wondering if other single dads ever figured out how to beat back this kind of loneliness. At least the job gave me purpose. Protecting kids like Allison, even if they weren't my own. But something about that girl tonight stuck with me. Maya, that expensive laptop. The way she looked me straight in the eye, like she wasn't afraid of anything. Something didn't add up. The next morning, I showed up early for my shift. Habit, really. The campus was still shaking the sleep out of its eyes, the walkways damp with dew, when I spotted her behind the espresso machine at the coffee cart. Maya. She moved with a kind of precision you don't usually see in student workers. Every button on her uniform was fastened, every movement efficient, almost rehearsed. Her name tag sat crooked, though, like she wasn't used to wearing one. When she handed me my regular black coffee, I noticed her hands. Soft. Too soft. No calluses, no roughness from years of food service or late-night shifts. Not the hands of someone grinding out minimum wage. "How's your laptop after last night?" I asked, more curious than I meant to sound. "Fine, thank you," she said quickly. "Those guys, they target anyone who doesn't fit their expectations." Her voice carried an accent I couldn't place. Not regional, not foreign exactly. More like someone raised in prep schools and debate clubs. The kind of tone that says private tutors and polished dinners, not late rent and extra shifts. I studied her a little closer. She didn't flinch. In fact, her eyes kept wandering over my uniform, my badge number, even the radio frequency sticker on my belt. Like she was cataloging every detail. "You're a senior, right? Must be exciting. Almost done." I tried to keep it casual. Her smile flickered, just for a second. Like I'd brushed too close to something she didn't want exposed. Yes, hoping to finish strong in May. Just trying to make ends meet while completing my degree. I nodded, thinking of Allison, her constant battle against lab fees, textbooks, housing costs. Boston University wasn't cheap, and she was already pushing herself too hard. My daughter's a freshman up in Boston. Pre-med track. I know how tough the financial pressure can be. For the first time since I'd met her, Maya's expression softened. Vulnerability seeped through her carefully built composure. She's incredibly lucky to have a father who understands and supports her dreams. That caught me off guard. Most students brushed off that kind of talk, but she said it like it mattered, like she wished she had the same. 2 days later, I found her again, this time in the library. She sat surrounded by heavy textbooks stacked like bricks: corporate finance, international law, strategic management. Not your average course load. She wrote in a legal pad, her penmanship neat and deliberate. When she noticed me coming, she snapped her laptop shut too fast. But not before I glimpsed an email header: Sterling Industries board meeting agenda. Business major? I asked, settling into the chair across from her. Her fingers drummed the table, a nervous habit that didn't match the polished way she carried herself. Senior capstone project, she said, gesturing at the books. 4 years of preparation leading to this final semester. I could tell she wasn't lying, but she wasn't telling the whole truth either. She leaned back, frustrated. Though I'm not entirely sure my conclusions will be popular with certain people who matter. I nodded, remembering all the reports I'd filed in the Army that no commander wanted to read. Sometimes the truth isn't convenient for the people in charge. Doesn't make it any less true. Her eyes lifted to mine, sharp and searching, as if I'd hit a nerve. What's your project about? I asked. Corporate ethics. Social responsibility in modern business. Whether companies can stay profitable while treating employees as human beings, not just numbers on a ledger. Her voice shifted when she said it. Strong, passionate. For the first time, she sounded like a student, not some mystery wrapped in money and secrets. She paused, studying me. I suppose that sounds idealistic to someone who works in the real world. I thought about Jennifer's medical bills, Allison's scholarship barely covering tuition, the late nights that left me exhausted but still broke. Doesn't sound idealistic, I told her. Sounds necessary. For a moment, something like hope lit up her face. Maybe relief. That weekend, I heard Maya had called in sick and missed her Saturday shift. The supervisor mentioned the flu, bad enough to keep her in bed. I knew it wasn't my business, but something about her reminded me too much of Allison. Young, stubborn, carrying weight she shouldn't have to carry alone. So I stopped by the campus market after my shift, picked up soup, crackers, orange juice. Nothing fancy, just the kind of comfort food you bring when someone's down. Her dorm was in the senior housing complex, the kind of place that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s. When she opened the door, she was pale and flushed, her voice weak. Still, she carried herself with that strange dignity, like she wouldn't let even a fever knock her down. You didn't have to come, she whispered. The room was simple, standard-issue furniture, thin carpet, walls bare except for a few photos on her desk. But those photos told a different story. Expensive European architecture, graduation ceremonies at schools that definitely weren't public. I set the soup on her desk, right next to a jar of La Mer moisturizer, the kind of thing you see behind glass counters at department stores, price tags high enough to make your jaw tighten. $300 an ounce. Not something you buy on coffee cart wages. This is what people do when they care about each other, I said quietly, pouring soup into a bowl. They show up when someone needs it. Her eyes filled fast, tears she tried to blink away. My father has never brought me soup when I was sick. Never asked if I'd eaten. Never asked if I felt safe walking alone at night. Her voice cracked, sharp edges breaking through. He measures caring differently. Success metrics. Performance indicators. Return on investment. I sat down in her desk chair, studying her. For the first time, she wasn't guarded, wasn't playing any role. Just a sick young woman who wanted someone to care if she was okay. Over the weeks that followed, we slipped into a rhythm. I showed her how to change the oil in her old Honda Civic when it started coughing. She helped me pick out a care package for Allison, steering me towards study supplements and stress relief teas I'd never have thought of. We checked in on each other, me after her late shifts, her with updates about her project or some new recipes she'd tried in that tiny dorm kitchen. The more time I spent with her, the more contradictions surfaced. That laptop of hers needed software licenses most students couldn't dream of affording. She'd step outside to take phone calls, her voice dropping low, speaking about things that had nothing to do with part-time work or professors. When we went shopping for Allison's care package, she knew luxury brands better than I knew power tools. She tossed out casual stories about prep schools and summers abroad in Europe, then changed the subject so fast it was like she hoped I hadn't noticed. One night, sitting on the quad under the dim campus lights, she let the mask slip again. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life," she said, her voice so tired it went straight to my bones. "Like the real me is locked away somewhere, and I'm just playing this role to prove a point to people who will never understand." She looked at me, eyes searching, waiting for something. What if when I finally become who I'm supposed to be, I disappoint the only person who ever cared about me for just being me? I thought of Allison, miles away, trying to live up to impossible expectations of her own. I knew exactly what to say. Anyone who truly cares about you will love you for who you are. Not what you can provide, not what you'll inherit, not what you'll accomplish. Just you. That broke her. She leaned into me, crying quietly, and for a moment I held her the same way I'd hold my daughter. "I've never had anyone say that before," she whispered. "Never had anyone worry about me without expecting something in return." Something shifted inside me that night. My protective instincts had been quiet since Allison left for college. But sitting there with Maya, they came roaring back. She needed someone. And maybe, just maybe, I needed someone too. The weeks slipped into a pattern I hadn't expected. It started small, her Honda coughing up smoke, me showing her how to check the oil and tighten the battery connections. She stood beside me with a flashlight, asking questions with the same intensity she used when flipping through her textbooks. When the engine finally turned over, she clapped like it was some kind of miracle. Next time it was my turn. I needed to send Allison a care package, but I had no idea what a stressed-out college freshman actually needed. I thought granola bars and maybe a stack of ramen. Maya shook her head, pulling items off shelves like she'd been training for it her whole life. High-quality study supplements, teas that calm nerves, even little things like blue light glasses for marathon study nights. I never would have thought of half of it. We built a routine out of nothing. After her evening shifts, I'd swing by and walk her back across campus. Sometimes she'd hand me cookies she baked from recipes too complicated for a dorm oven, and I'd tell her stories from my army days or about raising Allison. Other times, she'd update me on her capstone project, her voice lighting up as she spoke about building companies that cared more about people than stockholders. And slowly, I started to feel it, the presence of another daughter in my life. Not to replace Allison, never that, but like my instincts as a father had found a second outlet. Still, the contradictions never stopped. Her laptop needed software worth more than most students' cars. She'd step away to answer phone calls and clip tones, always careful not to let me hear too much. She knew luxury brands like someone born into them. When she spoke about her past, Europe and prep school slipped out before she caught herself and changed the subject. One night, sitting on a bench in the quad, she let the mask drop completely. Her voice was low, heavy. "Sometimes I think I'm just playing a part. Like I'm living someone else's life, trying to prove something to people who will never get it." I turned toward her, quiet for a moment. "Maya, the people who matter won't love you for what you can do or what you'll inherit. They'll love you for who you are. That's it." Her tears came fast, and I didn't stop her. She leaned against me, shaking. I've never had anyone worry about me like that. Not once. Holding her, I realized something important. It wasn't just that Maya needed someone. I did too. The house back home felt emptier every time I walked through the door. Allison was miles away, chasing her dream. Jennifer was gone. The bracelet in my nightstand drawer sat heavier every time I opened it. But now, I had someone right in front of me who looked at me the way Allison used to, like I was someone worth leaning on. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel quite so alone. Spring semester's career fair always brought a buzz to campus. The gym was packed wall to wall with recruiters, students in stiff suits, and tables stacked with glossy brochures. I liked working security at these events. It was one of the few times I could look at these kids and think, yeah, they're the future. Maybe all the hours I put in keeping this place safe actually meant something. I was scanning the crowd when the atmosphere shifted. A convoy of Blacktown cars pulled up outside, windows tinted, plates marked corporate. Out stepped men in sharp suits, the kind that didn't wrinkle even in the wind. And then he appeared, Robert Sterling. I knew his face from business news. CEO of Sterling Industries. One of the wealthiest men in the country. What the hell was he doing at a community college career fair? Before I could piece it together, a familiar voice cut through the noise. Bradford, the same rich kid who'd been bullying Maya that night. He practically ran up to Sterling like a dog wagging its tail. Mr. Sterling, perfect timing, sir. Your daughter's social experiment has been the talk of campus. I froze. Did I hear that right? An assistant handed Sterling a tablet, showing him surveillance footage. My stomach dropped as I saw myself in frame. Walking Maya across campus, sitting with her in the library, even standing at the coffee cart. Cassandra Maya Sterling, the assistant said smoothly. She's been living on $800 a month under her middle name, working minimum wage jobs, as per your agreement. The world tilted. Maya wasn't Maya. She was Sterling's daughter. Billionaire's daughter. Every question I'd had about the laptop, the photos, the expensive cream, it all snapped into place like the final piece of a puzzle I didn't want solved. Sterling strode into the gym with his entourage trailing behind him like soldiers. Students stepped aside, whispering, pointing. I followed, heart pounding, not sure if I was angry, humiliated, or just plain lost. Maya was at the coffee cart, pouring espresso, when she looked up and saw him. All the color drained from her face. She knew this moment had been coming. Enough of this little experiment, Cassandra. Sterling's voice boomed, filling the entire space. 4 months pretending to be working class is more than enough. Graduation is next week. Board orientation begins Monday morning. Time to step into your real life. Her hands shook so badly, she nearly dropped the cup. Father, please, not here. Not in front of everyone. Students around us fell silent, eating up every word. Bradford stood off to the side with a smug grin, enjoying the show. Sterling turned his gaze on me. Cold. Calculating. And who is this gentleman? Another test subject in your anthropological project? Bradford snorted. That's the night guard, sir. Been playing surrogate dad to her all semester. The words hit harder than a punch. For months of late-night talks, soup and crackers, advice I thought mattered, all of it twisted into some cruel experiment. My chest tightened with humiliation. Had I been nothing more than a charity case? Entertainment for the billionaire's daughter? Maya's eyes locked on mine, desperate, pleading. Please, she mouthed silently. Let me explain. But I turned away. I couldn't look at her. Not with everyone watching. Not with my stomach burning from the realization that I'd been the fool at the center of the story. That night, I came home to find an envelope slipped under my door. Her handwriting on expensive paper. I didn't open it. Straight into the trash. The next morning, the newspaper headline made sure the whole town knew. Billionaire CEO's daughter goes undercover at community college. The photo underneath showed me teaching Maya how to change her car oil. The caption might as well have read, "Local security guard duped by rich girl's performance." By sunrise, my phone was ringing off the hook. Reporters, TV crews, even co-workers laughing about how I'd been babysitting billionaires. Everywhere I went, I felt eyes on me. Grocery store, gas station, walking across campus, all of them whispering. And for the first time since Jennifer's funeral, I broke down. Not from grief, but from sheer humiliation. I tried to avoid her after that day. I changed my patrol routes, skipped my usual stops, even started bringing coffee from home instead of passing by the cart. Still, she found ways to leave pieces of herself behind. Letters slid under the office door, small gifts left on my desk. I ignored them all. One afternoon, I walked in to find the bracelet I dropped during the chaos sitting neatly on my desk. A new charm hung from it, freshly engraved, to the father I needed most. My throat tightened, but I shoved it into a drawer. I wasn't ready to believe a word of it. The following Sunday, against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at the campus chapel. I don't know why I went. Maybe because I needed to hear it from her face to face. Maybe because part of me still cared, no matter how much I hated admitting it. She was already there, sitting in the front pew in simple rehearsal clothes. No designer outfits. No airs. Just a young woman with red-rimmed eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "I know I don't deserve it." I stayed standing, arms crossed. "Help me understand, Maya, or Cassandra, or whoever you really are. Why did you let me think you were struggling? Why let me believe you needed my help?" Her tears started immediately. Because I did need your help. Just not the way you think. She clasped her hands together, fighting to steady her voice. Do you know what it's like to have a father who measures love in quarterly reports? Who tracks performance metrics instead of asking if you're happy? Who's never once brought you soup when you're sick? I wanted to stay angry, but her words hit like a hammer. She went on, her voice raw. When I turned 21, my father ordered me to transfer to Wharton to prepare for succession. I begged him for one last semester on my own terms. I told him I'd live on minimum wage, no accounts, no cards, no family money. He thought I'd fail in weeks. He even sent those old classmates of mine to hassle me, to make sure I broke. But I didn't. And then you showed up that night. She wiped her eyes and looked straight at me. You didn't know who I was. You didn't want anything from me. You just helped. Do you know how rare that is in my world? I finally sat down in the pew across the aisle, but I couldn't meet her gaze. I lost sleep worrying if you could afford textbooks while your family could buy this whole college without noticing. I taught you life skills you didn't even need. Do you understand how foolish that makes me feel? She shook her head hard. It wasn't foolish. I wasn't struggling financially. I was suffocating. And you gave me air. Every time you asked if I'd eaten, if I felt safe, if I was okay, you were the first person in my life who cared about me as a person, not a product. The chapel was quiet except for her voice breaking and the old wooden pews creaking under our weight. I stood, pulling the bracelet from my pocket, and set it down between us on the pew. This was meant for my daughter, for someone who truly needs her father's guidance. You already have a father, Maya. He may not give you what you want, but he's powerful enough to give you anything else. She picked it up, cradling it like it was fragile glass. But I don't have a father who loves me. Not like you did. I shook my head, softer now. That's not mine to fix. You've got resources I can't imagine. You'll figure out your life. She didn't stop me as I walked to the door. She knew words wouldn't close the distance between us. Just before I left, her voice carried after me, faint as a prayer. I love you too, Dad. And for the second time in my life, I walked away from someone I cared about, knowing it was the only way I could keep standing. 3 weeks after that chapel meeting, my phone jolted me awake at 3 in the morning. Allison's voice was frantic on the other end, shaking in a way I'd never heard before. Dad, Emily found me passed out in the bathroom. I'm fine now, but I can't keep up. 25 hours a week at work, 16 credit hours of pre-med. I don't even have the textbook I need for biology. I'm failing, Dad. I don't know what to do. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, helpless. My little girl was 200 miles away, drowning. And no matter how many extra shifts I pulled, there wasn't enough money to fix it all. Baby, I'll drive up first thing in the morning. I promised, but the words felt thin. The next day, I stepped out of my building and stopped dead in my tracks. Maya was waiting by the curb, not in designer clothes, not in her coffee shop uniform, just jeans and a Boston University hoodie that hung loose on her frame. In her arms was a stack of brand new textbooks and lab manuals. I heard about Allison, she said quietly, avoiding my eyes. Boston has peer tutoring programs for pre-med students. I made some calls. She'll have the help she needs. I stared at her, my chest tight with a mix of anger and gratitude. What do you want from me, Maya? Haven't you already collected enough research? Nothing, she said firmly. Absolutely nothing. Allison is your daughter, and you taught me that family comes first, no matter the cost. I wanted to argue, but I didn't have the strength. I opened the passenger door, and she climbed in. We drove the hours to Boston in silence, broken only by the hum of the highway. Finally, she began to talk. Not to justify, not to excuse, just to tell the truth. She told me about her father freezing her accounts, cutting her off to make sure she failed her experiment. About the classmates he'd sent to hound her until she cracked. About the loneliness of growing up surrounded by wealth, but starved of real connection. Every conversation we had, every piece of advice you gave, that was the first real parenting I ever felt in my life, she said, staring out the window at the Massachusetts woods. It wasn't data collection. It was survival. When we reached Boston, Maya didn't just drop off the books. She stayed the whole weekend, helped Allison set up study schedules, connected her with top pre-med students from her old prep school network, sat with her late into the night, listening in ways even I sometimes struggled to. Sunday evening, as I packed up to drive home, Allison handed me the bracelet. Her smile was tired but softer. Dad, Maya said this belongs with family. She added something, too. A tiny silver stethoscope charm dangled next to the others, engraved with the words, "For Allison's dreams, and the father who believes in them." I closed my hand around it, feeling the weight of more than silver. Maybe forgiveness wasn't a single decision. Maybe it came in pieces, like new charms added to an old bracelet. The drive back from Boston was quieter than I expected. Maya sat beside me, head leaned against the window, the passing headlights painting her face in streaks of gold and shadow. I didn't press her for more words. She'd already given me enough truth to last a lifetime. By the time I pulled into my parking lot, something between us had shifted. Not back to what it was before, but not broken anymore either. Fragile, maybe, but real. I was so afraid you'd see me as a manipulator, I admitted, hands still gripping the wheel. I thought I was just a fool who got played. Her eyes were wet, but steady. And I was terrified you'd never believe that I truly needed you. That your kindness filled a void I'd been carrying my whole life. We both sat there for a moment, breathing in the quiet. Then she said something I won't forget. Maybe we gave each other something real, even if it wasn't forever. 6 months later, an envelope showed up in my mailbox with a Chicago postmark. Inside was a photo of Maya in her graduation gown, smiling in front of the Sterling Industries building. On the back, her handwriting sprawled across company letterhead. "Marcus, I started work at headquarters, deferred the MBA for a year. Not because my father told me to, but because you taught me the difference between obligation and purpose. I hope you're proud." I didn't attend her graduation, but her influence reached me anyway. Sterling Industries rolled out new study programs at community colleges. They overhauled employee wellness policies so no one needed two jobs just to pay rent. And then came the Kane Sterling Foundation, scholarships for first-generation students. As for me, I started volunteering with the Student Success Program on campus. Funny how it worked. I used the same tools Maya once taught me. Listening without judgment, caring without expecting anything back. Students began to find me not just for safety concerns, but for advice, encouragement, someone who would sit with them when the weight got too heavy. The bracelet never left my pocket. Sometimes I wore it during mentorship sessions. Sometimes Allison borrowed it for exams, always returning it with a new note of gratitude. And every so often, a small charm would arrive in the mail from Chicago, Maya's way of marking milestones from a distance. We weren't in each other's daily lives anymore, but our choices carried the other's fingerprints. Maya was shaping corporate policy with compassion. I was shaping young lives on campus with patience. Different worlds, same heartbeat. One evening, a senior stopped me during rounds. She sat on a bench, staring at the ground. "Mr. Kane, I heard you help students with family pressure. I'm being pushed into a career I don't want." I poured her some coffee from my thermos, sat beside her, and listened. The way I once listened to Maya. Across the quad, the setting sun caught the Sterling Industries logo on a banner fluttering in the breeze. She was 300 miles away, but I felt her there anyway. And it hit me. Sometimes the most powerful relationships don't end when people part ways. They live on in choices, in ripples, in the quiet echoes of love once shared. Maya and I had found something neither of us expected, a father and daughter who chose each other, if only for a season. And that season would keep shaping lives long after we both moved on. The seasons rolled on, and with them the ordinary rhythm of campus life. New students arriving with wide eyes, seniors leaving with hurried goodbyes, the in-between years filled with noise, exams, and late-night mistakes. My patrols never changed much. Same sidewalks, same buildings, same bench under the oak tree where kids came to talk when the pressure was too much. But I wasn't the same man who had first walked into that dormitory months earlier. Back then, I thought my life was about holding steady, keeping my head down, paying the bills, waiting for Allison's calls. What I didn't realize was how much room I still had to grow, even at 45. Maya had forced me to see that. At first through anger, then through heartbreak, and finally through a kind of clarity that only comes when the dust settles. She had shown me that dignity didn't come from money or titles, but from how you cared for people when nobody else bothered. Students began seeking me out on their own, not because of my badge, but because of my willingness to sit, listen, and believe in them. They didn't need perfect advice. They just needed someone to remind them they mattered. And every time I pulled the bracelet from my pocket, feeling the cool weight of the charms between my fingers, I thought about both of my daughters, one by blood, one by choice. both shaping me in ways I hadn't expected. Allison pressed forward toward medical school, steadier now, braver. Maya transformed her father's empire one policy at a time, her signature carrying compassion into boardrooms where it had never lived before. As for me, I kept walking the same paths, carrying my thermos of coffee and offering whatever wisdom I had left to give. Because I'd learned something worth holding on to. Sometimes the most lasting bonds aren't carved by years or bloodlines. They're carved by the moments when someone shows up, quietly, with nothing to gain, just the pure act of caring. And those bonds, once formed, don't fade. They echo,